So Dewenji, I'm the Global Shea Alliance Regional Office Manager. I'm based in Togo, and I'll be your moderator today for this panel discussion on fostering resilient agri-food systems in the Great Green Wall Initiative. So the Global Shea Alliance is the shea industry association, and we have more than 800 members from 40 countries around the world. We are a membership-based association, and we have different stakeholders, including NGOs, private sector companies, women cooperatives, and affiliates who are mainly service providers. We focus all our intervention on private partnership model in order to enhance trade system, and also having a landscape restoration approach. And the third aspect of our intervention is focused on women empowerment. Why are we having this session this morning? The, the Sahelian communities in the green world face disproportionate climate changes risk, with entrepreneurs rising 1.5 times faster than the global average. Consequently, there is an urgent need to foster the climate and economic resilience of the 130 million people living in the Sahel, who mostly derive their livelihood from agriculture. The proposed event will then discuss strategies and best practices to foster resilient agri-food systems in the Sahel, showcasing results and practices to foster resilient agri-food in the Sahel, and insight from the reversing land degradation in Shea Communities in Mali and Burkina Faso project that has been funded by the Australian Development Corporation that we would like to thank through the UNCCD. Today, we will delve into the strategies for agroforestry promotion, opportunities for livelihood enhancement offered by non-timber forest products, as well as insight on restoration achievements. We will also discuss opportunities for collaboration and scaling up what is working in the system. To discuss, we have 5 great speakers for this panel discussion. I'm going to introduce them quickly. The first panelist on stage is called Mr. Gilles Amadou Ouedraogo. He is the program management officer within the Great Green Wall Accelerator of UNCCD's global mechanism. In this role, Gilles manages 4 projects which support the coordination and implementation of Sahel initiatives, including the Great Green Wall Initiative for the Sahel and Sahara. He plays a key role in monitoring the progress of the world's largest nature-based solutions towards land restoration, job creation, and greenhouse gas sequestration in over 11 Sahel countries. In this role, Gilles convenes task forces on monitoring, data management, and governance in the aim to streamline regional support, project management, donors relations, partner engagement, strategic planning for the implementation of the DGW. His effort includes country support ranging from capacity building to benchmarking and impact measurement. Gilles is also responsible for supporting the Pan-African Agency for the Great Green Wall with the creation and design of the Great Green Wall Observatory, which track progresses and results from the GGW projects across the region. He's keen on sharing his experience and learning from his peers during this UNCCD COP in Riyadh. Gilles, welcome to this panel discussion.
Thank you very much.
Our second panelist on stage is Tom Skiro from TradeAid. Tom is the CEO of TradeAid, an organization that has spent nearly 40 years dedicated to restoring dryland areas in Africa. Tom has over 20 years of experience working for leading organizations combating poverty and land degradation. Thank you, Tom, for joining our discussion this morning. Third panelist on stage, Joseph Kavi from Sahara Sahel Foods. Joseph is a pioneer in the readoption of lost native dryland tree food. He led the social enterprise Sahara Sahel Food in Zenda, Niger Republic, that processes the neglected produce from thorny, shriveled, genetical white perennials into quality food. Joseph, you are welcome on stage. I'm going to now introduce our fourth panelist, Natalia Alesiva from the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration. Ms. Alesiva has been the coordinator of the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration since May 2022 at UNEP headquarters. She has over 20 years of experience in the field of environment protection, climate change, water management, and development. She had started a career in academia and education, then consulted and managed projects for various multi and bilateral organizations. At the regional level in Central Asia, she was a staff member of several international organizations such as UNEP, UNDP, GIZ, the Japan Corporation, if I may call it so. On a global level, she worked as a senior networking officer at the Global Water Partnership Secretariat in Stockholm, serving three regional water partnership and being a focal point for the thematic area of transboundary cooperation and water security. Her previous assignment before rejoining UNEP in a current role was with FAO headquarters as the workstream leader at the Office of Climate Change, Environment, and Biodiversity. Ms. Alesiva completed her PhD studies at St. Petersburg State University in Russia at the Department of Environmental Security and Sustainable Development. She also holds a specialist diploma in environmental protection and use of natural resources and geography from the Belarusian State University in Minsk and a Master of Science in Environmental Science and Policy from the Central European University in Budapest. Thank you very much for being on stage. Our fifth panelist on stage, Rick McWhorter is the executive director of Water for West Africa. He's a global environmental sustainability consultant and humanitarian with the mission-driven spirit, passion for social justice, and more than 30 years of expertise in water and wastewater environmental management and field operation. Rick is the Water for West Africa executive director initiative and is based in Tamale in Ghana. His extensive travels has taken him to Africa on over 35 occasions where he has worked in countries such as Ghana, Nigeria, South Sudan, and Uganda. He is collaborating with the WASH Coalition Initiative in the Sahel region of West Africa to empower local communities through sustainable water access, sanitation solutions, and hygiene practices. Rick is focused on long-term community impact through WASH by improving health outcomes to foster conservation, environmental impact, and economic development. Thank you very much, Rick, for being on stage with us today. Before we continue, I would like to introduce a quick video that shows some impact on the GSA's project for your attention, please.
More than 16 million women across Africa. Its food sustains livelihoods, drives economies, and preserves traditions. Without intervention, this decline will continue. In January 2024, the Global Shea Alliance and the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification partnered to launch a pilot project in Mali and Burkina Faso. As part of the Great Green Wall Initiative, this project is restoring degraded land and bringing hope back to these women's fields. In just 7 months, 2,553 women, shea producers in 5 cooperatives have been empowered. 160 hectares of degraded land restored. 7,500 shea trees planted, alongside diverse crops such as baobabs, sesame, tomatoes, and peppers. With 5 new boreholes providing reliable water access and innovative tools such as tricycles, Women can now transport shea nuts more efficiently, increasing productivity and reducing labor.
This project is implemented in cooperation with the government of Austria. They have funded this pilot project to ensure that we're able to support women and to support income generating activities throughout the Sahel within the Great Green Wall initiative that we're doing. Livelihoods activities that we want to do, creating jobs is extremely important. This collaboration benefited 2,500 women through job creation in a very short time span. If it's scaled up, imagine the lives it can impact.
Our goal is to extend this support to more women, ensuring the sustainability of their livelihoods and the restoration of shea parklands. Our collaboration with the UNCCD and alignment with the Great Green Wall is just the beginning.
Restoring these shea parklands is about more than trees. It is about empowering women to lead their communities, provide for their families, and build hope for generations to come.
Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you to the Austrian Development Corporation who has helped to facilitate this project. As you can see, the project has impacted more than 2,000 women. To be more precise, 2,500 women has been impacted by this project. And as it was just saying, we are just starting with such an initiative, which is a pilot project. And if you have more, just imagine what we can achieve in the future. We are also just starting with our panel discussion, and I will go straight to the point, and I will start with Tom with my first question. Tom, I've read your short biography, and we can see that you are a practitioner. From your perspective, based on your experience, what are the key elements that we need to focus on if we want to, achieve economic and climate resilience for the local communities within the GGW?
Does this work? Yep. Hi. Thanks, Nestor. That's a great question. It's great to be here and great to see everyone here. It was interesting your point there about climate resilience and economic resilience. In some ways, they're one and the same thing in the Sahel. You can't be economically resilient without being climate resilient, and you can't be climate resilient without being economically resilient. The drivers of deforestation and land degradation are economic poverty. There's a clear reality. And what you create is an almost vicious cycle. As more land becomes degraded, as more forests are cut down, there's more need to degrade that land. So there's more poverty that's being created, and therefore more negative coping strategies are taken, and you end up in a vicious cycle of degradation. But it is possible, to your point on key conditions, it is possible to reverse that and create a virtuous circle where actually each positive restoration effort creates more economic resilience, creates more climate resilience, and those two things go hand in hand in that space. I think all of the work that you're doing at the Global Shea Alliance and the work that we're doing at Triade is very much focused on how do you create positive financial incentives for restoration and protection. And so clearly, critically, trees play a major part in that, and the forests and the landscapes around those communities. And it's about how do you best exploit and use that resource in the most sustainable way. So how do you look at things like non-timber forest products, shea, you've mentioned here, baobab, moringa. There's many other locally diverse native species that people use for tree products for food, for medicine, for other things. So how do you get communities accessing those products in the most effective way? How do you get them skilled to produce at high quality, at high volume? How do you connect them into the markets? And if you can do that effectively, you can really add significant amounts to household income. We found from our projects, on average, with good non-timber forest product livelihoods built in to diversify income, that you can double most people's income in places like Mali, Burkina Faso, Senegal, and these places in the Sahel. Because if you imagine the large proportion of the people that we're working with are on maybe $1 a day, maybe $1.10. And with good livelihoods built into non-timber forest products, you can double that income. I mean, the other thing to be climate resilient and economically resilient is to not feel the need to clear forest land and move from your degraded farm, but it's about how do you restore that farm? How do you sustainably manage that 1 hectare of land that you as a family, as a household might have, and how do you actually use nature to improve the soil, improve the yields that your farm's giving, and make sure that you and your family are food secure. So that's about soil and water management. It's about sustainable land management practices. It's about bringing trees into your farm and using agroforestry. It's around using organic fertilizers, liquid manures, all of these things. It's bringing in things that aren't inaccessible to the average farmer. It's just about skills change and mindset change, but it's not about bringing in large machinery or large chemical fertilizers. It's about using what you have available to you, and as long as the skills are there and skills are passed on between communities, then that really does make you more climate resilient and also economically resilient. I guess the last point for me on what are the key conditions, and this is something that I think gets overlooked, is just understanding what are the tenure systems in place to make this work effectively. And, it's not about trying to create a private land tenure system that maybe matches some of Europe or the US. It's about saying, what is the traditional land tenure system and how can that be strengthened to make sure that it actually works for everybody there. So on a farming basis, on a hectare basis, I think that works pretty effectively. But what doesn't work so effectively is on the common land, on the land that everybody shares, whether that's the forests or the pasture land. And actually codifying and making sure that there are clear rules and responsibilities for the community about that common land can really flip the dial on how that common land is used and sometimes abused. Because if everybody feels they have a responsibility, everybody knows that they benefit from that right of access, then actually they have a collective responsibility to look after and to preserve, protect, and restore that space. So I think that's another really important key condition.
Very good. You just mentioned a very good point right now, saying that the collective responsibility of the communities. How do you think we can ensure that effectively in a community? How do you make sure that communities really understand what their responsibilities are in preserving land and also sharing the common land to achieve something very concretely?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they inherently know and historically know that it's their community's land and they have a collective responsibility. Sometimes the problem is about the clarity and the equality of that system. So how do you make sure that there are very clear communicated systems in place, that everybody's signed up to that there is a kind of there is a collective tenure or a lease to that space that says for the next 30, 40 years we are always given access to this land. We're always able to forage for non-timber forest products. We're always able to use its pasture land. And in that right, we also include the responsibilities. Okay, so who is going to be ensuring that there's fire watches, that there's fire breaks being cut? Who is going to be doing any replanting that's required? Who's going to be looking at the tree health within the forest? And establishing, how we all collectively come together and do that. It takes time. It takes discussions, I think it's really important that it's represented by a diverse group from the community and that everybody's voice is heard.
Thank you very much, Tom. I will come back to you, but let me go straight to Joseph to hear from his perspective as well. Joseph, could you walk us through your achievements to enhance resilience in the Niger?
Well, thank you very much. What we have been doing has a lot in common with what we saw on the video here. We saw a very interesting value chain, the Shea, and we saw the challenges and how they work on making this native species be put to good value. And what we're doing is we're looking at other native species for the Sahel, but ones that grow further north into drier zones and that are much lesser known, that have been forgotten for decades, maybe a century or so, and that have also been stigmatized because in times of need, like Tom said, these are areas where people need resilience, where we have droughts coming every few years, and crops of annual harvests fail, so people need to find something else to eat. So they would fall back on these traditional plants in times of drought and hardship. And there would be the stigmatization that, oh, you're falling back on this miserable food, and it shows that you're not doing well, and so forth. So there was a complex built around them. So what we have done is we worked on removing that complex, creating new ways of eating these foods that are more adapted to our current time, and getting these foods back to consumers, and then again getting them back to the rural smallholders so that they also eat them once more. So we do that with species like the Boscia senegalensis, the Hansa, the Balanitis egyptiaca, the desert date, the Sisyphus mauritiana, the jujube, Mairua crassifolia, the giga leaf, and more than about 20 different native species. And we've done that with some 2,000 women in 80 communities. But most of all, we organize them, we help them produce, harvest these fruits, and then we process them into quality foods that we sell to consumers mainly in urban markets in order to create income for the people on the countryside.
Thank you very much, Joseph. I was in that room yesterday when you were mentioned as an award winner. So as a private sector, what do you think is necessary for a private sector to get in order to achieve all those results?
I think that there are several things that are difficult at the moment. The market in Niger has been a difficult one, and over the last few years, we first had the COVID crisis that shook the market a lot with much difficulties in moving products around, and we saw purchasing power among customers immediately dropped when the anti-COVID measures were put in place. And then a few years later, we had a change in government, and there were complications with the neighboring countries who blocked borders, and bank systems were put on a halt. And we noticed the same thing again. Purchasing power dropped. Most of the existing customers stopped ordering, and we had these major shocks on the market. And adapting to those, handling those, has been very challenging. And this is an important issue because the key to encouraging the smallholders to regreening their environments and growing trees lies in the stability of the offtake. The better we are at having regular purchases and being able to buy year by year similar amounts, the more these women invest in these trees, because they realize they can build livelihoods on them. But when the shocks are heavy, it also means that we are not able to purchase on a stable basis from these people. And it also creates hesitation among them and insecurity, like, okay, if we invest in this, we still don't know if we're resilient. And like Tom said, everybody actually wants to be resilient, know that they have something that works, something they can rely on. And I think one of the best things we can work on is growing markets for these foods, both in the country and abroad. And the more places we find where they can be sold regularly, the more we can make the whole value chain work from beginning to the end.
Thank you, Joseph. Rick, let me hear from you now. I wanted to say that we have a very big elephant in the room, because without water we cannot plant any trees. Without water, there are a lot of things that we cannot achieve. We saw in the video when we started this session that the project provided the water facility for the population to be able to do the maintenance, the tree maintenance after planting. But we know that we also encounter a number of challenges. Could you please share with us some of those challenges in relation to access to water, and how can we go further to improve our project in the communities?
Well, first, I want to say thank you for having the opportunity to be part of this panel. Thank you, Joseph and Tom, for your comments. I first also want to thank Jim Sutherland, who was planned to be here today, putting this presentation together and wasn't able to be here for various reasons. But we just appreciate the opportunity. In terms of resilience and restoration, we're providing clean water for have provided for the past 30 years, clean water for 1.2 million recipients impacted by clean water. So when you put it in context of the Sahel, we work mainly, our base is in Tamale area, And so it gives us a great launching point to provide clean water access for the Sahel. We have a partnership with Global Shea Alliance on a current project. And so just to really cut to the chase and make it simple, is previously we operated within silos. That is that we had the agricultural sector, we had the economic sector, we had the water sector, and before climate became a big issue, we just kind of worked in our own sectors and our own silos. But now because of climate and the impact of severe weather, especially in the Sahel, just observing it firsthand, it can be very traumatic. We just had a school we were working with to completely lose a crop that they had planted this past year, a soybean crop, because of climate. And so it's a real thing. And so the resilience and restoration is, it has to be put in context of collaboration, not working in silos, putting together consortiums like we're working in now. It's so important to do that. There's really three main focus areas, and that's infrastructure, that's social, and environmental. Those three focuses definitely impact clean water from various standpoints. The infrastructure is just not there. Just being in the Sahel, in the southern part of the Sahel area, Shea parks are so important. We worked in those communities, and we see what Shea parks, the quality of life that can be achieved by just simply having shade. We just forget about the shade when you've got a climate that's almost 40 degrees Celsius for about 4 months out of the year, every single day. And so just having the restoration component of the shade and the wildlife and the conservation, the birds that are in those Shea parks are just tremendous. So as Tom said, it's not just about economy, it's just not about the products, but it's about the total holistic outcome of all the composites working together to provide resilience and restoration in these communities. Charcoal production is a huge problem. Well, it's a solution for many people, but oftentimes, as Tom said, that people just use what they have, and they don't have opportunity in the northern part of Ghana, the southern part of Sahel. So what do they turn to? They turn to charcoal production. They cut trees, they convert it to charcoal, and that just becomes a cycle that has to be intervened. It's cultural, it's social, but they're using what they have because their children are hungry. The women need opportunity. So providing opportunity through agricultural, agronomic, agroforestry, it provides a tremendous improvement in livelihoods. And so clean water is essentially a catalyst to all of that. It's a catalyst for opportunity. How can a lady provide an adequate living for her family when she has to struggle during birth without having clean water in the clinic that she gives birth in? So having clean water in terms of just a water and sanitation component is huge. But that also falls into the category of economic livelihood improvements, where now, because she has clean water, she has opportunity for her and her children. She can provide a better living for her children. So clean water, essentially, I can say it over and over, but it's simply a catalyst for opportunity. Also, just from an agronomic standpoint, having boreholes, we formerly just depended on rainfall, rain-fed crops, but now with climate, we have to move into something else, something different. Boreholes, solar-operated boreholes, are a tremendous solution for that problem. It provides agronomic irrigation during the off-season for maybe second crops, tomatoes, etc. So it provides so much opportunity. And also, as I mentioned, just use what you have. But with the climate variability, we can't just simply focus on rainfall. We have to look at other opportunities. We have to also, we're working with a project with Global Shea Alliance now, where we're just looking at simple outcomes, just very simple outcomes of economic progress and livelihoods and health and well-being. Just start where you are. Start with where you can start. Start with what you have. Put a small consortium together, and you can provide some really good outcomes with what you have. And so I think that's in terms of resilience and restoration from the agronomic standpoint. that clean water is a catalyst for all of that as we work together.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. I'm going to turn to Natalia. I nearly stopped briefing when I was reading your portfolio, actually. It shows the lot of experience you have in the sector. And you, from your perspective, as coming from the UN Decade for Restoration, what are the lessons learned that we can get from the Great Green Wall Initiative, and what should we avoid moving forward?
Thank you for asking, and big thanks for the invitation, because the Great Green Wall Initiative, just to mention, it's one of the World Restoration flagships under UN Decade, and that's why we're actually doing these types of flagships, to let actually other countries and other locations to learn from this experience, right? So that's why we're basically asking the countries and the UN Decade partners to nominate these restoration initiatives, and then during certain kind of assessment and selection process, the best ones have been announced and celebrated. So the Great Green Wall is one of these. And for us, it's really important also that it's a large-scale restoration, because as you indicate, we were not really coming with any new targets, but there've been already 1 billion hectares already committed to the restoration, right? So that's why we were really trying to see how to have this, let's say, practical large-scale restoration going on in a way of being also sustainable, because you can name quite some examples of monoculture or on some kind of very strange practices. Even they've been aiming for the good, really having more trees and more, how to say, greener areas. But if you plant the trees in the desert or in some other locations, it's sometimes not the best thing you can do, right? So that's why looking at the Great Green Wall, I mean, from my point of view, I will probably look at the kind of 3 levels, what we can learn. I mean, on the very high level, it's very, I mean, from my point of view, it's a really good example of regional collaboration, because once we're really looking at these large-scale restoration activities, the collaboration and the regional aspect sometimes is a key, because you can reach much more and you can achieve much more if you have proper synergies, coordination and interaction among the countries, instead of fighting each other, instead of being in a conflict, whatever. I know that in Great Green Wall, it's also in some locations, it's not always that peaceful and there are always certain issues, right? But still on the regional level, I would have to say that we do celebrate that that's a great regional activity. And that's why now we've heard, for example, about the Great Blue Wall, for example, which is coming actually also in Africa, but on the coastal zone, right? So it's also a good sign that the other areas and other countries, they do recognize this experience of regional collaboration being together, right? But then going maybe a bit more to the national level, we were just launching the State of Finance for Nature brief, looking at restoration finance on Tuesday. And we found that it's much more public funds are still being invested in the restoration, and these funds are growing quite fast. But the public sector is still behind, and even they've been growing a bit over certain years, but it's like marginal growth, you know. I mean, it's coming up, but it's not something like wow, right? So that's why what I would say on the national level, which would be great to have, and I think also in some of the countries of the Great Green Wall, it's already coming up, is really having governments and this kind of state funding, but also, of course, international type of institutions and IFIs, et cetera, really stimulating the private business investments in order to, as it was already mentioned, like having certain insurance, some kind of de-risking, whatever, right? Because even if I'm always saying that the most of the countries in Africa are developing countries, but still it's a lot of opportunities, and it's a lot of business opportunities also, not just for the local companies, but also, for example, for international companies as well. So for them to come and invest and really kind of having people enjoying these extra opportunities, these new green jobs, etc., there should be some type of space, fiscal, regulatory, political, whatever, really to be sure, as it was also mentioned, even for the local level, like you said, that people should know that they're able to sell tomorrow, right? So the same also for the bigger companies, for all kind of other types of investors, right? They would like to get their money back, and hopefully also not just back, but also somehow increasing in terms of the profits, etc. Right? So that's something which I think should be coming more and more on the national level. And as we're saying, we're happy to see it's already kind of unpacking. But then coming to the local level, as it was said, yeah, exactly on the water type of availability and local engagement, etc. We see a lot of actually interest and a lot of, let's say, desire to have more and more local communities and indigenous people being involved. And also, since I was in Cali at CBD COP earlier this year, and actually it was a special decision by the parties of CBD to have a dedicated body and I have dedicated stream on indigenous people, right? So that's something which I think also should be more and more promoted and supported also in this region because, yes, of course, we do have traditional structures and all kind of, let's say, municipality, counties, whatever, depending on the country, how it's called, right? But the most important that for really sustainable type of restoration activities, we need local people to be in and also benefiting from this restoration. And this you can do only if you know these people, if you know what they want, if you know how to get them in, and if you also have the kind of trust in terms of securing this investment and having these trees and whatever you do for the long-term kind of, let's say, living, right? Because there have been lots of issues then if you plant one year and then the next year you have some issues, either the forest fires are coming or the water is not enough or whatever, and then you just basically lose whatever you've done. But with local communities being in, being engaged, being benefiting and living from this, it's much more chances that you would find a way of how to drive and how to have also some indigenous knowledge, local knowledge, how to get this. For example, I saw very nice also examples from the Great Green Walls, how Great Green Wall, some of the areas, how you do this indigenous type of small kind of I'm trying to find the correct name. It's a very kind of ancient type of seedling kind of exercise. Yeah, exactly. And it's something which is, I mean, it's very simple, right? But if you don't do it and if you don't really kind of get in, then some other types of plantations, whatever, they're not sustainable. But these ones are thriving, right? And it's very kind of old type of tradition. And why do we ignore them, right? We have this already in hands. We have to support it. So, I mean, I will probably stop here because for me it's really important that we have also these different levels and different things somehow coherent in a way of having then, let's say, all partners involved and things progressing well. Thanks.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you very much. I will now go back to our fifth panelist on stage, Gilles. Gilles, I know that at your position, you play a key role in streamlining approaches between stakeholders, country, in order to maximize the result. Could you please share with us UNCCD's approach in, achieving more results, and also how could we scale up a project like the one we just saw with the GSA at the beginning of this session?
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm having some trouble with my voice, but thank you so much, Nestor. And I really want to congratulate you and to congratulate Global Shea Alliance, not only for organizing this event, but this panel is extraordinary. I've learned one thing, at least one thing, from each of you, and thank you so much. The contributions are great. The panel is diverse, and I think the session is engaging. But I'd like to make a recommendation to make the session just a bit more engaging, if you don't mind. Can I ask the participants to fill the seats in the front, please? Especially the ones in the back, if you don't mind. Afterwards, this will make the questions more engaging.
More engaging.
If the participants in the back could please come in the front, that would be great.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now you're trapped with us and you can't leave.
Perfect. Thank you, Gilles. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you for the question. It's a great one. Results. Everyone here talked about solutions, and tying it up with results at the end, I think, is great. We at the Great Greenwell Accelerator, the approach that we've tried to do, and I think it was very well pointed out, especially by UNCCD. The Great Greenwell is an initiative that has a regional scope, It's thousands and thousands of projects, and it's 11 countries. How do you measure progress for all of them when they're not the same? This is the question that we attempted to answer, and the only proposition that we have so far is an attempt at harmonizing indicators and harmonizing information. So the first year of UNCCD's accelerator process, we harmonized these indicators. We presented it to the countries. I see one of them here, actually, represented by Burkina Faso. And they validated this process of harmonizing indicators. So we decided restoration of hectares was the way we were going to measure this progress, and not number of trees planted. We decided that the tons of carbon sequestered in the ground was the way that we were going to measure progress as well, in addition to the number of jobs created, the number of green jobs created either in the energy sector or the land restoration sector, be it farming, be it forestry or something like that, and the number of total beneficiaries. So I really liked your intervention on value chains especially, and the consistency that is needed on the consumption side to incentivize. I want to focus on women. So women in communities to keep producing and keep their activities alive. It's crucial. And when you have political instability, unfortunately, becomes difficult. But I feel for the situation of Niger, and I think the only thing we can do is keep going, right? There's light at the end of the tunnel, in my opinion. Now, going back to results, having this harmonized results management framework, we then created a platform, so a website that is accessible by the countries where they can report on the projects that they manage. Seeing that all Great Green Wall projects are different, having that common measure makes it easier for us to assess the progress that's being made. The most significant contribution of this platform as well is that we're also able to track funding. In 2020, there was a study that was conducted on the effectiveness of the Great Green Wall Initiative, and that report essentially underlined the fact that it was very difficult to track funding towards the Great Green Wall. And it was very difficult to track what a Great Green Wall project is and how far along we are with the initiative. They did some sort of baseline, if you want, and by then around 300,000 hectares had been restored for the Great Green Wall. Then targets were identified, so 10 million jobs, 100 million hectares restored, and the 250 million tons of carbon sequestered. Now, using these targets, we've made them benchmarks for this platform, and today, if you go on it, we presented it here yesterday in a different event, so I'm sorry I can't show it to you now, but we have made progress towards the One Planet Summit pledges that were made in 2021, up to $19 billion. Now, as our colleague identified, there's one very, very crucial issue at hand. It is the coordination at the national level and connecting that to the regional level coordination. Because when we launched the platform in May 2024, the feedback that we received from the countries was, this is an excellent tool, but Gilles, I'm sorry, the projects that you have in there, we have no management in them. We have no role in these projects. You say they're Great Green Wall projects. The donors are saying that they're Great Green Wall projects, but why are they not going through the national agencies of the Great Green Wall? Why are we not aware of them? They're going through the Ministry of Finance. They're going through the Ministry of maybe hydrology, of planning, of economy. But why are we not involved in this process? And these are the questions that we need to answer together. At the country level, we need to ensure that a national coordination is in place. This is why, with the Pan-African Agency of the Great Green Wall, we've pushed for national coalitions. This would be civil society, private sector, government, any actor in the Great Green Wall that is actively contributing to these results, sitting at a table, reporting on what they do, how they do it, and who they reach. And this would enable us to really answer this gap in national coordination and regional coordination as well. It's the only way for partners to effectively and impactfully support efforts on the ground, because we can meet here and we can make all the recommendations that we want, but if at the community level the actions that are recommended aren't put in place, and if at the national level these decisions don't have political support, we're not going to get very far, unfortunately. So this question of results is extremely important. And we've only proposed a solution. It's not complete. I feel like this platform can grow so much more. There's so much more contributions that can be made. TreeAid, for instance, is developing a methodology on carbon that we think is wonderful. It's a really great way to go, given the fact that there isn't always, or currently doesn't exist, policies, national policies and regulations at the national level for carbon, and carbon banks and carbon markets. Guidelines can be decided upon in a collaborative manner with the government, with the stakeholders, with the private sector, with the communities as well. We need to be very, very transparent on who gets what out of this process if it's going to be positive. So I again, thank you very much for the invitation, and really appreciate the question.
Thank you very much, Gilles. Thank you to all our panelists. We still have around 15 minutes left, so I would like to hear from the audience. It's time for your contributions. If you have any questions, comments, or if you just want to make a contribution to the discussion here, this is the time for you. Yes, please. Marie, je pense qu'il y a une contribution.
Thank you. It's working. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for the opportunity, and good afternoon, panelists. My question actually goes to the great green wall guy. I'm Ibrahim Ajara, by the way. I'm a soil scientist, and I come from the Gambia. It's actually in regards to the digital tool that you mentioned, the digital tool that you mentioned that is used to measure the progress of various countries. I just want to ask, how do you actually ensure the integrity of the data that is being reported by various countries? How do we ensure that abnormal data are not actually put into the platform? Because I think at the end of the day, it's not only about the data and the good reports, but also it's about the impact and the change that you have been able to create in those various communities. So it's very simple and direct question. How do you ensure the integrity of the data? Thank you.
Thank you. Gilles, do you want to respond now? Do we take all the questions? Is there any question? Are there questions from the participants so that we can just respond to all of them at once for the sake of time? Des questions? Okay. So, Gilles, do you want to? Yeah, take it now. Vous avez une question? Do you have a question, please? Ok, comment?
Ok, merci. Moi, c'est Roch Panatigri. Je suis coordinateur national de la Grande Muraille Verte de Burkina Faso. Voilà, donc, comme ils l'ont si bien dit, dans le cadre du flagship, Burkina Faso aussi est un acteur vraiment incontournable. Et on voit que dans la mise en œuvre, les communautés sont vraiment mises en avant. Et c'est par les populations et avec les populations. Et à ce jour, comme le Burkina a pris l'option, dans le cadre de la décentralisation, c'est les communautés qui doivent vraiment être au centre des activités. Donc, on essaie de transférer toutes les compétences techniques et tout ce qu'il faut pour la mise en œuvre de ces différents projets-là au niveau communautaire. Donc, je peux dire que avec la FAO qu'on est en train de travailler dans le cadre de ce projet et l'UNEP, on a vraiment des données assez intéressantes en termes d'implication, en termes de participation et en termes vraiment de, j'allais dire, de responsabilité des communautés. Donc, je voulais mettre l'accent sur ces aspects parce que la Grande Muraille Verte, c'est bien, il y a une structure nationale qui est là, mais c'est les populations qui sont au centre de la mise en œuvre et on essaie de valoriser aussi tout ce qui est chaîne de valeur par les communautés aujourd'hui et on peut s'en réjouir du niveau d'avancement et cela peut en tout cas conforter la mise en œuvre de cette initiative au niveau du Burkina. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. If I can allow myself to just make a quick summary for the participants. So he's from the GGGW in Burkina Faso. He just make an emphasis on the community awareness about the GGW in Burkina Faso. He emphasized the fact that in Burkina Faso, the community has full ownership on the initiative. And for him, in order to achieve success, it's very important to consider that, yes, of course, the initiative is ongoing, but the success of this initiative is due to the importance of those communities who have understood fully their responsibilities, and also as part of their activities, they make sure that the knowledge and skills are transferred to the communities in order to ensure the activities goes as good as possible. Thank you. Any other comment or questions? If not, I'm going back to the stage. Gilles, if you wanted to take your question now.
Sure. Thank you very much. So, to the question from Gambia, Samamboka. Very good question. We have a validation process. We do not put anything on the platform unless it has been validated by our donors, by the, if you want, the technical and financial partners that have pledged to the One Planet Summit conference. So they send us the list of projects that they, to their standards, call Great Green Wall projects. This includes the name of the project, the amount of the project that has been validated for implementation, the duration of the project, the area in which it's going to be implemented. So this is with geographic data, the length, so the duration, if I didn't say that already. And I know I'm forgetting one other aspect, the pillar of intervention that is predominant in the implementation of the project. This allows us to give a classification and to look by country how much is being funded. In the case of regional projects, for instance, we're able to divide and subdivide that, so we have one project for multiple different countries. So once they send us this information, we put it in the platform, send it back to them, and ask them to validate. And that way, we know that this information from the donor side is good. Now, then the country's responsibility and the onus is on them to look at these projects and decide which ones are truly or don't comply with their standards for the Great Green Wall. It's very important to mention that this platform is currently being managed by the Pan-African Agency for the Great Green Wall. So their regulations and their rules apply. Our recommendation is that this validation process also happen at the country level, so that the countries and the donors can have a dialogue and decide together what they're calling Great Green Wall projects and what metrics they're choosing. Because you will also notice that, unfortunately, not all of the projects that are proposed by donors are in the Great Green Wall line of action, the physical line of action, the Great Green Wall area. They're not always in it, but because it's in the country and it's also contributing to Great Green Wall objectives, they decide to contribute them to them. Some countries accept this, some countries do not, and so it's not ours to say what is right and what is wrong. I think that's a conversation that is incumbent upon the countries and the donors. We are just here to facilitate. Yeah.
Thank you, Jill. I will come back to the panelists, all the panelists. But before I get back to you, just keep in mind just one question. If you had a magic tool to foster resilient agri-food system in the GGW, what would it be? That would be your final word. But before I get back to you, please allow me to take one comment again from the audience, and then I will come back.
Donc, bonjour à tous. Moi, c'est Rokia Bachir. Je suis nigérienne. Je suis dans l'agro-entrepreneuriat. J'ai juste une conviction à partager avec vous. Donc, j'ai commencé à transformer des produits issus de l'agroforesterie, des produits forestiers non ligneux. Je donne toujours l'exemple du baobab que j'aime beaucoup. Et au fur et à mesure que j'ai avancé dans mon travail, depuis 2015, Je transforme des produits que je mets sur le marché pour la résilience alimentaire et je me suis rendu compte qu'il est important d'allier l'alimentation et la restauration de l'environnement. Donc, pourquoi prélever de l'environnement, avoir quelque chose, c'est-à-dire sur le plan économique, et ne pas rendre quelque chose à cet environnement-là. Donc, petit à petit, je me suis intéressée à l'environnement, à la résilience climatique, à tout ce qui est préservation de l'environnement. Donc, j'ai commencé à replanter à partir d'une petite pépinière avec des résidus de production. On a des graines que nous mettions avant à la poubelle. On s'est dit maintenant, pourquoi ne pas faire une pépinière et essayer de replanter. Donc, c'est pour dire que vraiment, la résilience alimentaire et puis la préservation de l'environnement, ça va de soi. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Rukiatou. So Rukiatou from Niger is an agribusiness entrepreneur, and she specializes in the non-timber forest product. She processed baobab, and she's been doing so for many years now. And for her, it's very important to kind of, have, when you are taking something from someone, you have to give it back. So if she, as an entrepreneur, she is taking from the nature something, she also, has to contribute back. So she was using baobab, but she also realized that while she's developing a business, she's also destroying the land. So she believes that if, as an entrepreneur, she wants to grow a business, while she is taking from the nature, she also has to restore land. So that's how she now started building a nursery. So while she gets the baobab from the, from the forest, she also come back and do a nursery so that she can replant and restore the land. So she emphasized the need for all entrepreneurs, all initiatives to ally their business and protecting the environment in order to, ensure that our business succeeds. Any other questions or comments? If not, I will now go back to the panelists. I will start with Tom. Tom, please.
I quickly just coming in on Gilles' question that he got. I think, the observatory is quite young, right? And it's great what we've got to so far. I think my vision or my dream of where that gets to is that we don't rely on the ineffectiveness of humans so much for reporting, because I think, you're always going to get maybe 3-4% wrong in a report. And when you put all of those reports together, then you're going to get a lot of percentage points wrong. And so that's where I'm really dreaming of technology. And, you mentioned carbon and the way that satellite data is coming through. It's not going to tell us how many jobs are created on the ground, but at least for the land degradation, for the reforestation, at least for those kind of key statistics, we're able to use a lot more technology. I think that's where we need to get to, at least to triangulate what donors are saying, what governments are saying, just because yesterday was Land Day. We're hearing that 40% of all land is degraded. It just feels like a very round number. I feel like the whole system hasn't quite got its handle on exact numbers, and it's not just the Great Green Wall; it's across the world. How do we get these numbers as pure as possible? Because that would almost be one of my magical things, right? If I could just push a button and I could just see now where in Burkina Faso is degraded, where is not degraded, where would need the work soonest, where would need the work next, a real clear picture, that would be great. But actually the point that you asked about what would I really like to see, it would probably be, if I had a magic tool, it would be a blank check. Because the reality is right now, the funding to locally led programs on the ground is not there. There is money, particularly in the larger UN system, but actually, in terms of what I see on the ground when I go, there is not enough going to communities who are the ones to deliver on these programs, who are the force to make this happen. So I think that's probably the thing I would like most.
Fantastic. Rick, what about you?
Yeah, I can really echo what Tom has said. Just to cut to the chase, it'd be great if the magic tool would be a blank check. That's what everyone wants. I'm a fundraiser by trade, but also I'm a realist. And I'm not going to get a blank check. I can guarantee you that, most likely, unless there's a miracle. But what we can get is, maybe it's magic. Yeah, it's magical. Yeah, you're right, Tom. But that's a great point, and that's what we all want, and that's fantastic. But what we do have is collaboration. Not only am I a fundraiser, but I'm also a friend raiser. And to work in communities and to build stakeholders and allow stakeholders to have value and possession of the projects. From the local governments, from the municipalities to to the major governments, to the countries. We work with UNICEF in a lot of projects, and we try to give the clean water resources, the infrastructure to the community. We hand it over to them and build sanitation committees for them to have ownership of the project that builds resilience and restoration and anti-degradation for land communities. So yes, I think just collaboration would be the magic tool for everyone to be like-minded, to work together, heading in the same direction would be the magic tool that we want, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Joseph, can you share with us your magic tool?
Well, I would like to have a tool, a magic tool, to change everybody's food habits. I think we often forget that the biggest driver of land degradation in the world is food. The way we produce our food because we want to eat. Of course, there's industry, there's this and that. They're all important, they're all degrading. But the single biggest one is agriculture and food production. And we know that there are like 70,000 edible plant species in our world. And we're using 3 of them to produce 50% of our food. And well, it doesn't get much better for the rest either. It's a very, very small number of plants that are providing most of our food. We also know that we have more and more health problems related to our diets. And we know that if we want a very good gut health, we should be eating at least 30 different plant species per week. Now, how many of us actually do that? Very few nowadays, because we are no longer eating diversity. So I believe in the principle of conserving through use. Whatever we don't use, we lose. Whatever we use, we care for, we maintain it, and we make it work better. So if we could change our diet so we actually diversify and we start using, again, all these ancestral foods that were eaten by our parents, grandparents, and in the centuries and millennia past, we will actually realize why we need them and how we get them back, and the whole chain will start working again. So that's where I would like to put my wish.
Thank you very much. I will come to Gilles. Gilles, if you want to share with us your magic tool.
Oh, I wanted to hear Natalia's first. But we saved the best for last, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. My wish is a bit twofold, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
It is having renewable energy available everywhere so we can have access to energy, but especially access to water everywhere in the Sahel. There's a man in the back over there by the name of Dr. Nkyaka who will tell you that the Sahel region is not short of water at all. It's all underground. It's actually one of the richest aquifers in water in the world. It's just a question of mobilizing it. Guinea, is anyone here from Guinea? This man, I think, is from Guinea. No, he left. Guinea?
Yeah, he's from
Yes,
Guinea.
exactly. Here he is. There you go. Guinea is dubbed the water tower of Africa because alone it can distribute water for the entire region of Western Africa at least, if not all of the Sahel. So my magic solution would, and I think this would answer all of our problems. Just having access to that water, the communities have enough for themselves, and then once all of their needs are met, they can focus on initiatives like the Great Green Wall. Being in farms and on the field sometimes in projects, I've heard sometimes the comment of, why are you making us choose between the water that we have for our animals and for ourselves and this environmental project? That's not a priority for us. Some days we don't have any water, so why do you want us to focus on trees? And I couldn't give an answer. So that's my wish.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Gilles.
Thank you.
Last but the best, Natalia.
Well, I'm not sure if it's the best, but I would like to build on what Jill was bringing up. I think that my magic solution would be for people understanding that they're part of nature and part of ecosystem. That you can always separate and say, okay, the nature and the trees are somewhere there, and it's me, my cattle, and my house, right? But once the climate change hits, right? Once you have some disasters, etc., you're not able really to change the nature in a way of, you believe that you can, right? But you're still part of this, let's say, kind of global big ecosystem, right? So my understanding that, I don't know whether it's a magic or it's more like really more talking to people and really being more, how to say, kind of, maybe even a bit more in the alarm state, saying that I've been just in the previous event where we were at some point referring to the time clock and saying that we're after 11 already. I was feeling that we're 5 minutes to 12. I'm sorry, I mean to midnight, because with all this overshot, with all this overconsumption, whatever, we always believe that we're somehow outside of this nature cycle, right? So we can still do more. And as you said about this diet, right? You can still eat different things and you can still do some monocrop, whatever, without really looking at the availability of water, land, I don't know, on the climate change, etc. Right? So I think we have really to understand that we're part of the ecosystem, and that's why we have to behave also responsibly towards Mother Earth, right? Because we don't have another Earth. They've been already said that we don't have a planet B. And even on this planet A, we're killing it by itself. I mean, we're doing this with our own hands, right? So I think this should be somehow understood, because I've been trained as environmentalist, and I'm always trying to say that, yes, I mean, it's so obvious, right? But once you go, okay, if you go to these more like environmental events, you have people like-minded. But once you go to a bit different circles, whatever, people are still thinking that, wow, it's so much still space around. You can still build more cities. You can still, I don't know, have more fields. You can still have more water. You can still have what? From where? I'm sorry. I mean, like, we're really over the kind of red line already. So this is my call for magic as well, for people to understand that we're already at the kind of, I don't know, either over or 5 minutes to 12. Thanks.
Thank you very much to all your perspective. Thank you very much to all the participants. We've not only discussed solutions, but we also discussed results. Very key point is about how we harmonize indicators and progress, how we adopt the value chain approach, and how do we coordinate all the initiatives at the national level and also connect those initiatives to the regional level. We've also got some ideas about being transparent about who gets what in the system. We've also got collaboration among CSOs, collaboration among private sectors, and a good governance. At the end of the session, I also got a few magical solutions that I will like to share with you. I got a blank check. I got collaboration among stakeholders. I got changing food habits. I also got access to renewable energy, especially water in the Sahel. I got that we need to be part of nature and be part of ecosystem. Thank you very much to all the participants for your contribution. It was a pleasure to moderate this panel discussion, and I believe we have more to foster resilient agri-food systems in the great green world. Thank you. So can we have a picture before we...